WCW SuperBrawl 1997 or 7, I guess. Why do we count SuperBrawls? Why does every other show have a year associated to it and SuperBrawls have numbers? I'm sure there's an answer. It's probably easily Googleable, but I'm not going to do it, so fuck you. It's not 7. Gold Dust is 7. But anyways, this is a fun little show. We got Roddy Piper versus Hulk Hogan for the world title. Pretty much every title's on the line. A spot in the Horsemen's on the line. Nancy Sullivan's on the line. There's a lot going on here. Not all of it ages particularly well, but we have fun along the way, so let's get right into it. So you better stay right there and take a listen, or a watch, or a tickle on the cheek to the Apron Bump Podcast.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get it started. Yeah, back. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? What is up? How's everybody doing? How is everybody's pickles? Are all your pickles tickled? Folks, I hope so. Cucumbers in my ass. I don't know why we're going on this phallic fruit tangent. I feel like it's kind of an oxymoron. Anyways, we got WCW SuperBrawl 1997 on the way today. Good little show. This pay-per-view follows up Sold Out 1997, which was the first, I believe, the first WCW pay-per-view of the year. And good golly, Miss Molly, that might be the worst piece of cinema I've ever laid my eyes upon. So nothing could have been worse than that. So I don't know if I just came into the show with just a low bar set, but I kind of enjoyed it. It's kind of your typical WCW show. There's a lot of good wrestling. We got some luchadors. We got some, big name talent, or we got some talent that would go on to be big names, but maybe are still trying to find their character. Maybe are still trying to find their footing as an all-around performer, namely guys like Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero. And so there's a lot of fascinating stuff, actually, in watching this show. We got a barn burner cruiserweight title match between Dean Malenko and Syxx. Like I said, we got a luchador showcase, which is I'm not even gonna lay what is hilarious about it, but lots to get into with that one. Oh, we got a death match between Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan. I'm sure that'll age gracefully. Tag titles on the line. Lex Luger's here. The Giant's here. Hogan, Piper. Piper escaped from Alcatraz to get here. We get into that. But all of that to say, this show is loaded, and we have a fun old time talking about it. Who's we, hardest part of the ring? I'm just looking at one person. Well, let me tell you, it's myself and the boys at Marks with Mike's podcast joined me today. Dallas and JT, representing their pod, hopped on, talked some WCW. If you look at their logo, obviously a lot of WCW influence in it. So we got a couple of, I don't know if a historian is the right word, a couple of enthusiasts in the old World Championship Wrestling. So it was a great time having them on. Really fun podcast themselves, Marks with Mikes. They get into all the major happenings and whatnot with pro wrestling and just whatever comes up. So strongly recommend you check those guys out wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as live on YouTube and Twitch. All of this info will be in the description below. Great follows on social media too. Make sure to follow them on X, Instagram, all that stuff. Really fun group of guys over there, and you will get a sense of it in this episode. But before we get to it, just want to stop you. Hey, settle down. What are you in a rush for? Settle down. We're going to get into it. All right? Take a seat. Grab yourself a Capri Sun and a sliced orange and just hang out. All right? Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this episode, where the hardest promotion battle of 1997 continues, where we pit WWF versus WCW versus ECW. We look at the three major North American companies and we see who's doing the best. We see who's doing the worst. We'll grade this show. We'll compare it to other shows. We'll look at all the wrestlers, all the storylines, in-ring, out-of-ring, what have you. There's points associated to everything, and we'll get into that in more detail when we get to that at the end of this episode. And whichever company has the most points at the end of 1997 will receive a purchase of a championship belt by your boy, the hardest part of the ring. As you can see behind me, got the old Intercontinental Championship, as because WWF won the year of 1996. They were harder than the other two promotions. So as of right now, ECW has a firm lead with 40 points. WWF has 14 points. WCW has 4. But things can swing pretty quickly as they have. So make sure you stay tuned to see what is all going on with that. Follow me at Apron Bump on all the social medias, TikTok, YouTube, X, Instagram. If you like this kind of episode, you like this era of wrestling, well, check out the link in the description. You like this type of episode and you want more wrestling wars of the 90s. All these 3 companies that we're talking about, I cover them all in chronological order. Started from WrestleMania 10, and I've worked my way through every single show from all these 3 companies up until this point. March, February, whatever month we're in. Quarter 1 of 1997. And yeah, so do that. Binge away. Like the video. Subscribe. Leave a rating. All of that happy horse shit. Join the Discord as well. All of this is in the description. Let's quit dilly-dallying and get to the episode, shall we? WCW SuperBrawl 1997 with myself and Dallas and JT from the Marks with Mikes podcast. Glad you guys come on here, talk some WCW. I'm judging by the logo. You guys are big WCW guys, or at least you are, JT.
Big, huge for me back in the day growing up. I was a real big WCW guy. Eventually went to that WWF, but I was huge on WCW.
As far as I'm concerned, I was more of a WWF guy, but I watched a lot of WCW, but they kind of lost me later on down the line.
Oh, yeah? At what point do you think they lost you?
Okay, so I'll give you my exact point that they lost me. Yeah. I think it was before Vince Russo had came in, and what they were doing with Gold, because at the time I was like heavily into Goldberg and Stone Cold. And once they kind of took his streak away, it kind of took away his luster, which ironically, if you think about it, the fall of WCW kind of started right around 98 of April. And that's right around the time that they lost the ratings war. So the exact point, I think, was when they started making Goldberg look stupid, silly, and weak. Plus, another thing is his feud with Scott Steiner just completely like
didn't do it for you.
It didn't work for me, brother. It didn't work for me.
It's yeah. I mean, during that, I mean, do you think WWF ultimately winning the ratings war was due to WWF getting hot or WCW cooling off? Probably a little bit of both, but like more so.
To answer your question as respectfully as possible, I think it was a little bit of both, but I will say that the way that the Monday Night War started ultimately led to the demise of WCW. And let me explain. So if you remember when Hall and Nash went over after the curtain call in 96, WCW had advertised that Hall and Nash were invading from WWF. What happened was WCW was sued by Titan Sports right as this happened because basically it was using the likeness of Razor Ramon. The settlement, it went on for 4 years. There was a settlement in 2000 where in the settlement it said once if WCW were to ever be liquidated or whatever to go under, WWF would have the bidding rights to their assets and their library. Fast forward a year, boom. So I think another thing is overpaying the wrestlers and these guaranteed contracts were ultimately another thing. It was like a laundry list of things.
Some may say it deserves a whole 5-part documentary series. about it.
Oh.
Maybe.
Not again.
Yeah. I'll take 10 of them. I'll take 10 of them.
Did you guys watch the Death of WCW? I'm assuming you did, but did you watch that series? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, there's a lot of variables at play. I mean, there's books about it. There's like hundreds and hundreds of docs about it, but we're at a pretty hot portion of WCW, I would say, within the timeline. NWO is still relatively strong, even though. So I didn't watch WCW as a child. I was a WWF kid, so I'm pretty much watching all this stuff for the first time. I mean, I've seen like the docs and I know the major highlights and stuff. And I knew NWO got super diluted at some point. I didn't realize how fast that it kind of like, because it was like a few months of the NWO being cool. And we're at this point now where it's like still pretty good. But I mean, you got IRS as a part of it. You got stupid Buff Bagwell, which we'll touch on later. You got Scott Norton, which I like Scott Norton, but Big Bubba. Like, where do you think NWO is at this point in terms of like where their peak is? Like, are they still on the up or are they going down at this point?
So for me, they were still on the up and up because remember, we still didn't get Dennis Rodman yet. You know, at that point, you know what I'm saying? So it was still up. You know, you had IRS, you had Ted DiBiase inside there. You also had Macho Man who turned that night. You know what I'm saying? So it was still up. NWO didn't start going down until a little bit after the split. Once we got the NWO Wolfpack, we got the cool NWO, then we got the heel NWO. But they were on the up and up. Merchandise was selling off the racks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I remember middle school seeing NWO shirts, and I wanted one, and I wasn't getting one. You know what I'm saying? Like my parents, like, no, I'm not about to spend my money on that. But I remember seeing black and white, red and black. So NWO was definitely on the up and up. After that 98, the Finger Poke of Doom, cut it.
Yeah.
It honestly, when if you think about it, right? Once Bret Hart was kind of in the NWO as well, because he had a stint in the white and black part of the NWO.
Right.
That coupled with you got fucking Vincent in
How dare you?
NWO. I'm sorry.
You will not besmirch the name of Vincent on this podcast.
Okay. It's your podcast. I won't. But
he's the GOAT.
You were either in the NWO, the NWO Wolfpack, you were either a cruiserweight, you were either in the LWO, or you were just flying solo. That's pretty much was WCW's roster towards the end of the 90s. And
right.
Like JT said, after the Finger Poke of Doom, it's pretty much what it went down.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I mean, at this point in time here, we're fresh off of that sold out pay-per-view, the first ever one, which might be the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was just, there was nothing good about it. It was the Miss NWO stuff. I mean, me and Just talked all about it. It was just a chaotic, just clusterfuck of a show.
We have
coming
a word
into this
for
show,
that. We have a word for that.
Let me know.
It's called disaster class.
That's pretty much right on the nail of the head of the. I don't know. This show, though, coming into this show, I had not low expectations, but I was already kind of beaten down by Sold Out. So I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of show this was. Not to say it was like their best show ever, but it was pretty consistently, like there was some good in-ring wrestling, which WCW at this point, that's kind of few and far between in my opinion. And you got major storyline implications at the end, which may or may not have been well executed. We'll talk about it, but overall, thoughts on the show? SuperBrawl 97, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'm going thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm going thumbs up for, like I said, mostly WCW. I was WWF. I was going to during the New Generation era, I was going to live shows. Once they got to the Attitude era, I wasn't able to go to the live shows, but I started to pick up. But definitely a thumbs up for me.
I'm going to go ahead and I'll give it a thumbs up. There was more good than bad. There
Sure.
were some confusing points with Super Brawl 7 that I pretty much had, specifically the main event, which I had said earlier was very reminiscent of Starrcade 97, which was later that year because this took place in February. And with Hogan having there was a dusty finish again, and match was restarted, and the person who won the match at the beginning lost it at the end. But there were some great matches, Prince Iaukea versus Rey Mysterio, Dean Malenko versus Six, the six-man tag match, Juventud Guerrera, Super Kalo, and Conan putting on a show against each other with Kalo and Juventud and Ciclope being on the team against Viano 4, La Parca, and Conan. There was a lot of high-flying action. DDP got the crowd to pop. The San Francisco Death Match with, ironically, Chris Benoit and Master Kevin Sullivan.
Man, hindsight watching that is
it was like watching that now is like
he's gonna hang him, and I'm like, oh shit.
Oh my god, dude.
That was, I had to turn away for that for a second. It was a good show. I mean, there were some high points, there were some low points too. There is one low point I do want to point out aside from Hogan and Piper. In Prince Iaukea versus Rey Mysterio, this was for the World Television title. It was a great match. Prince Iaukea won because Lord Steven Regal interfered and cost Rey Mysterio the match. What bothered me the most was after the match, Iaukea realized he had beat Rey Mysterio, but he didn't like the way that he beat Rey Mysterio. So he hands him the belt. And you just beat the guy and you're giving him the belt. He's like, he doesn't want it. And then Rey Mysterio hands it back to him like, I don't want it. And Tony Schiavone even says, nobody wants the World Television Championship. What was the point of having this belt? It was just
title, man.
It was just like the European title. Like even the European title had more like aura behind it. Because at least people that held the European Championship made it mean something.
Yeah.
It's like Scott Hall said, what's the point of wearing a television championship belt if I'm not getting extra TV time?
Right. No, you're totally right. We'll definitely touch more on that when we get there. But the show opens up with Roddy Piper, who is where I'm assuming JT is also in Alcatraz. We're like losing you behind the logo. It's okay. But Roddy's in Alcatraz. I get because he had been there for a week leading up to this show. Because like you said, they're in San Francisco.
Right.
So he spent a week in a prison to prepare for a match with Hulk Hogan. Why do you ask? Well, it's because Hulk Hogan said some, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Hogan, because Roddy brought his son into the ring. Roddy's son, Colt. Hogan came in, which Roddy had to expect that. And Hogan basically punked out Roddy in front of his son. Do I have that right? Or are there any other details?
Yeah, but you pretty much got the main course of what was going on.
Yeah. So Roddy, they'll show up. It's just funny. He's like escaping Alcatraz. He's like all dirty and his shirt's ripped up. He finds a boat. And he's like, oh, let's go to the arena. And then he just starts sailing toward the arena. So we're led to believe he's sailing during this show to get to whatever the arena is called here, the Cow Palace.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think of all this Alcatraz business with Roddy Piper?
Man, it was definitely Piper breaking his little bit of Hollywood swing to the whole thing. But I thought it was corny. Thought it was kind of goofy. You know, this is me being an adult, but me as a kid, I liked the shit because I believed it, right?
Sick, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, I was probably more excited than that kid with the green shirt with the bowl haircut that kept popping up inside this pay-per-view. He was front row. So I was probably that excited because hey, it's Piper. You know, they made us believe he put himself in Alcatraz. So now he done caught a boat once again as a child, not knowing that it's going to take longer to get from Alcatraz to San Francisco by boat. But hey, I believed it. WWF turned around did the same thing in what was it, 90, 98, 97 with Goldust, with the whole O.J. Simpson thing. So I enjoyed it. It was definitely a good way to tie in the story, being Piper's crazy and all that stuff. But I enjoy that spot as a kid. As an adult, corny as fuck.
Right.
It's Piper. He can get away with it. So that's just the way I look at it. It's Piper.
It makes sense, right? Like when I was watching this, I was like, this seems definitely like something he would do, like as a shoot. Like I'm not even totally sure this is scripted. This could be just him being Piper. I'm looking up because I'm curious as to how long it will take to get from Alcatraz to, I think it's now Chase Center.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
See, wait, you can drive there? No, well, hold on. I can't.
You can
right.
swim there.
It's like the path is like through the water, but there's there's a boat. Yeah, it's not that far actually. You can get there in like 30 minutes
On the boat.
So, unless I have the wrong arena.
It says it's 45 minutes away.
Okay, so it's doable, right? So maybe they need to do that.
Well, I guess Kid Me was right.
There you go. See, we're wiser as children, you know.
Very much so.
Not so jaded, but man, we open up with a dandy of a matchup. We got the cruiserweight title on the line. Dean Malenko defending against Six, aka 123 Kid, aka X-Pac. By the way, I'm embarrassed to say that I just now put it together that he's 6 because it's 1 + 2 + 3. I don't know why I thought he was 6. I thought he was like the 6th member of the NWO, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just the end of it. I was like, I didn't question it. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
See, I used to always think that it was 1, 2, 3 plus KID equals 6 as a kid.
Oh yeah, you do got to take into account the letters.
It's
Yeah,
like
you do got to add those.
there, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I enjoyed the character work. 6 was basically X-Pac a little bit more turned up because he got, to me, I think he got away with a lot more there. Not so much with what he was saying, but more so for what he was doing. You know what I'm saying? So I enjoyed that match. First of all, he was a kleptomaniac. Let's just go ahead and put that out there. Sticky Fingers, aka Sticky Bandits. You know what I'm saying? Like he was stealing the titles, and then people eventually get it back. But I love the whole correlation of with Eddie Guerrero coming down, getting involved.
Right. Because Six initially stole the U.S. title from Eddie Guerrero, which made them have a ladder match at Sold Out in which Eddie won. So Six failed to steal that title. So he's like, well, let me just find another title to steal. Like we mentioned, nobody wants the TV title. So he said, hey, let me go steal the Cruiserweight title. So he steals that. And now, spoiler alert, he does not succeed at that either. So he's a terrible thief. It's terrible to be a thief, but when you're a bad thief, that's just a whole other level. But I agree. I really like this match. Dean Malenko, big Dean guy, especially in this like babyface kind of position, which I haven't seen much of him in, but he was just so like, 'cause he was pissed, getting his title stolen. So you could really feel that fire coming out from him in this match, like jump starting them, which is very like uncharacteristic with Dean because he's normally like very like tight laced, wait for the bell. Let's tie up, collar and elbow kind of thing. But he was just hot start right out the gate, power moves, power slams. So it was cool to see that character work from Dean here. But anything. Yep.
Yeah, and another thing is that Six had said something about Dean's father as well.
Yes.
Which is why his whole mood change was different. And then they had capitalized on that with Jericho later down the line. Another thing is that Six was working on Malenko's neck throughout the match. And Malenko's execution, like I remember Dean had hit this nasty power slam out of the corner.
Yeah.
And I just was like, oh my God, the execution.
That snap power slam was beautiful.
That snap power slam was just beautiful. And he kept going for the clover leaf at one point because he normally he waits to do that. But he was trying to work the leg. Six is working the neck. It was a great match, like B plus to an A minus level match, in my opinion. But Dean is like, he's notorious for, if he's the opening match or like the second to third match, like he knocks it out of the park. A good example, Dean Malenko versus Scotty 2 Hotty at Backlash 2000.
For no reason. They just went out there and stole the show for the light heavyweight title.
Triple H and The Rock were like, gosh, we gotta step it up. But that's the way it was. But solid match.
Yeah,
so good.
Definitely solid, man. My opinion on Dean Malenko is, if Dean Malenko was 6'1",
he'd be the GOAT.
He would be he's already the GOAT, just for him being a wrestler. But if he was 6'1", Dean Malenko would have had a run with the WCW title. Because he was one of their best wrestlers on the roster, and I dare anybody to find out of that whole entire roster that they had before Bret Hart that got there. It's not a lot of people that's above Dean Malenko when it does come to in-ring psychology, just all around wrestler. Dean was that dude.
Yeah. And like Dean, I feel like at this point, Dean's known for being just that like technically good wrestler, but this match showed a lot of his like intensity, his well-roundedness as a wrestler. So super impressive stuff here from both guys, really. And in particular, so let's talk about the Bronco Buster for a second. So,
oh my God.
It's a silly move, right? Like it's especially in the Attitude Era, it'd be like, oh, Mae Young's doing the Bronco Buster. She stuffed an anchovy in her underwear, and we're having fun. But we're in the early stages of the Bronco Buster here, whereas it's just like kind of one running like leg drop, I don't even call it crotch smash or whatever. But you brought up how Dean, he had neck surgery previously, so Six was working the neck, and I was watching this, like the Bronco Buster is kind of a devastating move when you look at it, when there's like intent behind it. Like I thought he snapped his neck. I don't know. It was like pretty quick. Like if you blinked, you would have missed it, but
yeah,
I think it's a pretty devastating move, low key.
And Dean sold the shit out of it too. That's another thing. He sold the shit out of that.
I would have sold it too.
Right. I mean,
someone whole entire, meat in my face, grinding like
Buster, man.
Especially Sixes. I mean, we've all seen it, right? We've all seen One Night in China.
Luckily, I did not.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. I'll send you the link.
Let's do a watch along. We'll do a little analysis of it.
So right here, this is where he. No, I'm just joking.
As long as there's baby oil.
He was very ahead of his time.
No ditty.
Well, this little ditty was nice. So eventually the finish comes because it's a good wrestling match, but it's WCW, so we can't just have a wrestling finish. Six grabs the Cruiserweight title. Mm-hmm. Eddie Guerrero sprints out to the ring because Six and Eddie are fresh off of their feud where we talked about how he stole Eddie's title. So Eddie sees this and he's ready. I mean, he just sprints. I want to know what the 40 time on Eddie Guerrero is because he was out there quickly.
That was a long entrance ramp too.
Yeah. And so Eddie grabs one end of the title belt from the outside as Six has the other ends on the inside. They have a little tug of war deal. Eventually Eddie lets go and Six, the title whiplashes and Six ends up hitting Dean in the head with the Cruiserweight title due to Eddie Guerrero's interference. And this is all like the ref, like the timing of the ref looking away as the title hit Dean was like just perfect because like the ref was admonishing Eddie to get him out of here. So, but smashes Dean in the head with the title belt, makes the pin. 1, 2, 3. New Cruiserweight champion, Six Pac. So I don't know. What do you guys think about the finish here?
Typical WCW finish.
Right.
I mean, typical heel finish. I mean, that wasn't. Heels have to cheat to win. That's just the way it is. And I didn't have a problem with it. I it basically protects Dean as a force, and it shows that Six has to cheat just to beat Dean Malenko. So that makes Dean look way more credible that he lost that way.
Right.
For me, typical Dusty finish, I guess. Because I think Dusty booked that match. I could be wrong. I can't remember who booked what. But, that was typical NWO back then. NWO really didn't have a lot of clean wins. I mean, come to think about it, there's very little clean wins by the NWO. So, typical NWO, once again, another match by the good guys.
Yeah, it's one of those finishes that, like, if you just saw it on paper, it looked kind of dumb, but it's like the way they executed it was about as good as they could have. So
no, it was perfect. The referee was in place. I mean, typical. I didn't see shit, so let me count 1, 2, 3 because someone's on the ground. But yeah,
it worked. New champ. So pretty hot way to start the show. And we shift from that match to Mean Gene backstage. He has a guest. But before the guest, he promotes the hotline, which I don't know if you guys ever called a hotline before.
Yes, I did.
Really? Yep. How'd that go?
You want to talk about after my parents got the bill or actually calling in?
All of it. Right, Make the call first.
So the call, you would actually hear Mean Gene sometimes, but it wouldn't be him directly talking to you. It would be like a pre-taped. And he's letting you know what's going down or what have you. After my parents got that bill, it was trouble in paradise, as Kofi Kingston used to call it. Used to say all the time. But it was trouble because those hotlines. I think it was like $9.99 a minute or something back then. I'm not sure how much it was, but it was
$9.99 a minute.
I think so. I can't remember. I mean, because when you watch it on Peacock, of course they block it out. But if you go on YouTube and watch an old pay-per-view where Mean Gene's advertising it, I think it's either $9.99 or $4.99 a minute. But the call usually lasted anywhere from like 3 to 5 minutes. It was never like over that.
Right. And are you like talking to anybody, or is it just all pre-recorded stuff?
No, it's pre-recorded. It's pre-recorded majority of the time. I've never got a chance to actually talk to someone live, like when you call it, WCW hotline. Let me tell you about what's going down. And
what about like the AOL chat rooms? I don't know if it was just WWF doing it at this point, but they would always cut to like Shawn Michaels like beep boop bopping on the laptop. You never talked to HBK on the on AIM.
Yep. Never talked to him.
I still got the number.
Just in case. Just in case they fire that bad boy up.
Yeah, it was like 1900, 909, 9900.
9900,
yep.
Wow, that's impressive. I wouldn't hate if they just got rid of social media and replaced it with a hotline. So you have to pay to find out all the news nowadays, all the spoilers and whatnot. Make yourself earn it. I'd be in support of that, I think.
But you know what? If we did it that way, a lot of people wouldn't be calling in the hotline because people want their news free.
Yeah, good.
They want their news free, but it's going to be a lot of people missing out. So you be having a lot of people, hey, you called hotline? What you hear? Actually people talking on the phones again. Like, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Socialization of people. That'd be crazy. But here you could call the hotline and get the scuttlebutt on Eric Bischoff in the NWO, were apparently spotted dining with a prominent WCW star, which I assume is alluding to what we see in the main events. But man, does Mean Gene keeping that under his hat, not telling anybody when he saw it coming? It's a bit shady on Gino's part, I think. But
Gene didn't want no smoke, though. If you look at like Gene was starting a lot of shit.
He's been through a lot, Gene.
But Mean Gene was starting a lot of shit, right? Stir up the pot, and then when it came time for something happening, like someone turning, oh my gosh, why would he do that? But on the hotline, you just advertise that this is who you saw. Like, come on, man.
What a heel Gene is. But yeah, so after that, Dallas comes in to interview with Mean Gene. And there's really not a lot going on here, but I felt like I was drawn in by DDP's charisma here. In an era where everybody's like, well, let me tell you something. DDP is just like a dude. Like, it's kind of comparable in my head to like LA Knight nowadays, where it's just natural charisma, something that draws you to him. And I guess that's why he became so popular. I mean, he was just an undercard guy wrestling on Pro, and now he's, in one of the biggest angles going right now. And basically the gist is that DDP's booked on the show, but he doesn't know who his opponent is. He knows it's going to be NWO. And then as this interview is happening, Gene's like, oh, I got something in my ear. Oh, breaking news. And apparently it's going to be Buff Bagwell facing DDP, which we'll touch on later in the show. But yeah, DDP as a character at this point. What are you guys thinking about him?
Yeah, DDP as a character, just flat out what WCW needed. It was a shot in the arm. And he had started wrestling at the age of 36. So there was a big time lapse of improvement from the time that he had started up until now. Another thing was DDP's feud with the NWO made him a star. That was the turning point for him, consistently being at odds with NWO, specifically the time on Nitro where he joined the NWO and told them to go screw themselves. Hit Hall with the diamond cutter, basically told NWO, nah, I'm not doing that. That was like pretty much with that coupled with being at odds with NWO. That was the height of his rise to stardom. And then shortly after, he just transitioned into one of the faces on the Mount Rushmore of WCW.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll touch on the match here in a little bit. But before that, we got a little 6-man tag on our hands here. A little lucha tag. So we got Conan, La Parca, and Villano 4 versus Ciclope, Juventud Guerrera, and Super Calo. So I got a lot to say about this match. My first question is to you guys. Have you guys seen the 6-man from Royal Rumble 1997, the previous month?
Yeah.
How do you think that match compares to this one? Yeah.
Yeah, nah, like there's a big gap. There's a big gap with that one.
Yeah.
The 6-man tag match at the Royal Rumble, there was a lot of low expectations for it because 6-man tag matches back in the 90s were just kind of like viewed as like taboo. Right. Because the only time multi-man matches really got any type of love were the Survivor Series matches or any of like the 8-man tags. With this one, you had high-paced offense from all 6 competitors, even with Villano 4 and Super Calo, Ciclope, Juventud and Villano 4 started it off. Juventud took a super nasty bump on his springboard dropkick. La Parca and Super Calo, when they went at it, Super Calo took 2 nasty bumps in one. There was it blew it out of the water, in my opinion. I thought the Royal Rumble 6-man tag match did not compare to this one. Yeah. But it was the thing is that while it was great, it got sloppy. It got very sloppy, including the ending. So there were a lot of high spots, but then it was also littered with dry spots. And at times, sometimes like Super Calo seemed out of place. And especially when the finish came and they performed the Star along with the Mexican surfboard, it just seemed like it got out of place after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, at one point, I think this happened a lot during the pay-per-view. The ref was giving the submission or pinfall to people that wasn't even legal. You know what I'm saying? Like, well,
it's a lucha 6-man. There are no tags, right?
No, I mean, there were no tags. Well, there were tags, but there was really no tags. I mean, at one point,
loose tags.
Yeah, it became a clusterfuck. But the match itself, I enjoyed it. It was something different on the card versus, the same thing, that you were used to seeing. So it was a fun match. I definitely enjoyed the six-man match. But the most thing I enjoyed was Super Colo, his glasses and hat never fucking
It's pretty
moved.
sick.
Like that's dope as hell. Like you doing bumps, you taking flips, you getting slammed on your shit, and your hat and your glasses don't move at all. How sick is that, bro? And then on top of that, like Dallas said earlier with the Mexican Star, that was the first time that I had seen that was in WCW. That was the first time that I seen it because I wasn't watching CMLL. I wasn't watching AAA back then as a kid. I didn't have access to it. But seeing that Star being performed, and then the surfboard, it was perfect. I mean, to me, it was a perfect ending for that match. But lots of fun, lots of lucha craziness. So it was definitely what WCW needed for that pay-per-view.
Yeah, and for anybody unfamiliar with the Star, because I was until watching this, it was basically four guys were like, I don't know how you like stretching each other, like all of their ankles were touching each other's ankles. They were all stretching each other out, and they were getting all sweaty. It was crazy. But I don't know. Go look it up if you don't know what it is. Fuck, use Google. But there was there was a lot of. I mean, the energy of this match was good. Like in comparing it to the Rumble 6-man, the energy was definitely better in this one. But there were, to your point, a lot of sloppy parts to it. I mean, Ciclope almost unalives himself doing a twisting. So he's like doing an Asai moonsault to the outside, but he goes to the top rope instead of the second rope, and he like slips. So when he like does a twisting front flip, he just like torpedoes into the ground. I don't know how he got up from that, but that was pretty gnarly.
If he would have died, it would have been the second time La Parca would have seen somebody die in the ring.
Shout out to the chairman, La Parca, man. I remember having WCW Revenge as a kid. The only person besides like my regular people I would play with, your Rey Mysterios, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, La Parca was up there. La Parca was my dude because this man will beat your ass and dance in the midst of beating your ass. You know what I'm saying? like for that, what type of sick individual kicks your ass and then dances
Nobody
in
wants
midst beating your ass? Like, this is a sick individual.
He's just an evil person. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. Dives all over the place. Of course, there is. La Parca, like you said, showing out with a suicide dive with a chair, I think, at some point. But there's one spot that Hoovy, so Hoovitude goes for the 450 onto somebody. I forget who. The way the camera is, it's like right underneath of him. So you see perfectly him going for this 450 and exactly where he lands. And it could not be any clearer that he completely missed his opponent, but he still goes for the pin as if he hit him. But like, it's like, nobody saw that, but the camera was like right there. I was like, God damn it, WCW. But
that camera work was atrocious. when you look at what we got now, it's like,
oh yeah,
this is atrocious. I mean, y'all could have hired me back then. I could have got you better.
But Conan eventually wins. I mean, allegedly he wins with the power drop, which is like basically a crucifix power bomb sit down style onto Hoovitude. But Hoovy, I mean, he definitely kicks out at like 2.5.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was going for a 3.1, like a Hulk Hogan style kick out right at the end, but if he was, he mistimed, or if he didn't know that was the finish. But they showed it and they showed the replay. They're like, oh, yep, he got him. Move on.
I'm watching a replay. I'm like, yeah, he clearly kicked out. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
I'm surprised they showed the replay, to be honest.
That ref had somewhere to be. That ref had somewhere to be.
What do you mean?
Get these Mexican fellas out of here.
And then on top of that, you gotta whoa, come down there, JBL. No, no, you watching it, you watching it back. You know, Conan, gangster. Love Conan back.
Oh, he was the star of the match, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. Conan was smooth inside that match. That rolling clothesline, everything that Conan did, talking shit to the crowd, all that. Conan was him. But that referee, either he botched the finish or Hoovy botched the finish. But you could clearly see, and you could hear Dream, American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and Bobby the Brain going back and forth about the win. He's like, yep, he pinned him. It's like, are you sure? Yeah, he pinned him. Referee counted 3. It's like Dusty was hilarious on commentary.
Dude, we could do a whole episode on just things Dusty said. I mean, him and Bobby, just a hilarious duo.
Bobby the Bray Heenan said at one point, it's like, it's going to catch an Amtrak down here. And Dusty said, or he can catch a train. And Bobby's like, Amtrak and the train. Never mind, don't worry about it.
Dusty was on one on commentary. He was flubbing over his lines, stuttering, couldn't pronounce words. I am convinced that Dusty was drunk on commentary. I'm convinced.
No, that was just Dusty, bro. Like
that was.
Go back and watch any WCW.
I know
product. Dusty was
the Mafia kick thing with him and Tony Schiavone is like one of my favorite things. You know about that one?
No.
So there's a match. I forget what match it was, and then Tony Schiavone calls out, "Oh, that was a Mafia kick," and Dusty goes, "The hell you mean that was a Mafia kick? He just kicked him right in the mush. That got nothing to do with the Mafia."
Yes, I have heard that. Yeah.
And then Bobby the Brain Heenan comes in and is like, he's going to hit him with the Yugoslavia neck breaker.
those early matches with Mike Tenay, you know, they're all calling like the lucha matches, and Mike Tenay will be like, "Oh, that was a Japanese arm drag," and Dusty like, "What? Wait, in Japan?" Whatever the hell. So he's a treasure. This Dusty Rhodes,
national treasure. Love Dusty.
Do you know who else is a treasure? It's Prince Ikea, the new WCW TV champion, defending against Rey Mysterio Jr. So Steven Regal was the TV champion before this, and it was going to be Regal versus Mysterio on this pay-per-view. And on the Nitro before this, Regal comes out, he's cutting a promo on Rey. Like, he has a match with Prince Ikea, who is an unknown at this point, defending his title against, I don't know why he's defending the title against an unknown guy, but I digress. So Regal's cutting a promo on Rey. He's completely looking past Prince Ikea. He goes to the ring. He's like, "Oh, it's going to be a nice exhibition." And then the Prince ends up rolling him up and getting the win out of nowhere. A huge upset at the time. So Prince won the TV title from Regal, and now it's Prince versus Rey. First, I mean, it's cool to see Rey finally challenging, outside of the cruiserweight division, which he really hadn't done at this point. Good match. I think it's kind of a weird placement to put this right after the Lucha 6-man, because I feel like Rey brings so much of that Lucha style. I feel like you would want to split that up, maybe, but I don't know. That's nitpicky, but I thought it was pretty good stuff. What do you guys think about this one?
Match was good. I still don't know why Prince Ikea did not go anywhere after his WCW run, because he was actually pretty good.
He had a cool
There's
look
a reason.
too.
What happened was he quit the business after he hit the lottery.
Oh, I bet he's doing great now.
Yeah. Chris Jericho talked about it in his book. He said, Mike Prince, one of the nicest guys he's ever met. He quit the business as soon as he hit the lottery. So,
well, there we have it. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me if I hit the lottery. But man, the match itself, the two styles, the correlation, it definitely mixed very well, especially with the lucha style of Rey Mysterio. And then you had more so of a striking of striker / technician style from Prince Ikea. So it mixed very well. There were certain parts in the match where I was watching it, because rewatching it for the first time in over 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Certain parts in the match where you honestly didn't know which way this thing was going to go. You really didn't. You didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And having Steven Regal come out, it's amazing that the man doesn't age. It's Regal looks damn near the same.
He's always looked 40.
Yeah. It's like that Benjamin Button thing going on. He just once he hit 40, that was it. You're gonna look 40 the rest of your life. But he's always looked the same. But having his involvement inside the match was definitely, WCW at the point, because that was a lot of the things happening in WCW at the time. Even with the WCW contracted wrestlers and non-NWO members, you would see finishes like this where if they were beefing with somebody and someone lost a title, that person would come out, interrupt the match somehow, and they either cost the person the title or they get the challenger distracted. So classic WCW. But the match was good. I mean, this is where you got to see a lot of Rey Mysterio still bringing you new moves at the time. And some of those moves I haven't seen since that WCW match.
That suicide senton on a grounded opponent was, I mean, he couldn't have landed any heavier on Prince, because the Prince is laying prone on the floor. Ray comes with a suicide dive, does a flip, and just lands right. Which, by the way, the accuracy that it takes is crazy too. But yeah, he's busting out a lot of. I mean, especially for the time. Even when he busts out like the little 619, just the fake out, the crowd is like, "Whoa, what the hell just happened?" Like now we're just so accustomed to seeing it, but back then it was like wizardry.
So what is this sorcery?
It was a good match. I mean, Prince Ikea comes out with the Crash Bandicoot music, and.
Well, you just ruined Prince Ikea for me. Thanks.
No, he hit the lottery. Please, he could literally buy. He could buy my house 10 times.
Buy some shoes, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I remember Prince Ikea, and I was like, yeah, I am. I do like his style. And then when he came out, I was like, I'm like, it's weird because this is a match that, like you said, it should be a little bit higher on the card, or they could have actually. I wouldn't have.
I would open.
I was about to say I wouldn't have minded if they would have opened with that, but Rey Mysterio's popularity at that time was surging, and it was a good match. But like I said, the finish it buried the title because nobody really wanted that championship except Steven Regal. And if you beat somebody for the championship and then give the belt to that person, that completely diminishes any aura that championship had. And it didn't have much because people barely wanted to compete for it.
No, I mean, back in the day, I actually enjoyed the television title, though. At one point, it did have a nice run. Once we got to 99-ish, yeah. I want to say once we got to 99-ish, a little bit before Disco Inferno joined the NWO, that's when it was like, okay, this title ain't shit. Because back in the day, if you go look at the list, TV champions for WCW, they had some heavy hitters. Jericho was one of them.
Conan was one of them.
Conan. You also had Booker T, Stunning Steve Austin. You had some heavy hitters who actually held that title. But at doing the commentary, you hear Brain and Dusty going back and forth. Well, he's trying to give him the title. He don't want the title. And then Brain's like, well, hell, I'll take the title. It's worth something. But
you know what? I think I actually can pinpoint where the TV title went wrong is when the Renegade won it at Great American Bash. Because I started rewatching all this WCW stuff. It was like Johnny B. Bad and Regal were fighting for it. And you had Stunning Steve. You had Arn Anderson fighting for it. And then stupid Ultimate Warrior ripoff comes in and just ruins the whole thing. So I'm inclined to blame it on the Renegade, personally.
Whatever happened to that guy? Oh, never mind.
We don't talk about that.
So that title, honestly, yeah. So he's right. Yeah, when the Renegade won it, it definitely killed it, but it was restored
Right.
because that happened in 1995. So it was 2 years prior to when this occurred. But from what I remember, is that I know that Regal got it back, and then Ultimate Dragon took it from Prince Iaukea, and then
Okay.
that's when the following year when they did SuperBrawl 8, Booker T won it, and then kind of put it back
Hell
on the map.
yeah. GI
So
Bro,
yeah,
shout out.
yeah, man, great match though.
Booker T was that dude. You could tell that he was going solo that year.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk a lot of Booker here in a second, but yeah, I guess I'll just to tie this up. The finish, like you guys said, kind of a wonky finish. Regal comes out, costs Ray the match as Ray's going for like his West Coast pop springboard Rana, but Regal pulls his feet. Ray goes face first into the apron. Regal rolls him in. Prince pins him, unaware of what happens. So once he figures out what happens, he's like, "No, Ray, you have the title, actually." And then Ray's like, "No, you have the title." Which, to you guys' point, just completely like, what if they don't care about the title? Why do I care about the title? So interesting stuff, but a pretty decent match. So I'm not too mad about it. We cut back to Gino with the Giants. So the Giants here is going to be challenging for the tag team titles by himself later in the show, which we'll get into why exactly. Or he's going to team with Lex, but Lex isn't cleared, has a broken hand or whatever. Lex wasn't cleared by Eric Bischoff, but Lex feels like he can go, but Eric is NWO. Like I said, we'll get more into that, but very subdued version of the Giant here. Whenever I see a Giant promo, I'm like, what the hell are we going to get? He seems very humanized here, which I'm trying to decide if I like this version of the Giant, because I like a lot of what the Giant is doing right now, but I'm almost wondering, like, is he too humanized at this? I don't know what you guys made of this promo here.
The Giant before, when I say before, the Giant was more so of a monster back when Kevin Sullivan had him underneath his rings.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as he started beefing with the NWO, that's when you started to see the decline in the character, because, okay, you a Giant. Come on. Like, you a Giant, bro. You supposed to be smashing everything in front of you. None of this stuff that everybody throwing at you don't really phase you. I mean, you were already WCW champ at one point. You know what I'm saying? So when NWO came into town, we got our own Giant. So a lot of that badass mystique went to Kevin Nash as soon as he stepped foot in WCW. And you can see see the deterioration of the Giant continue to go down.
Yeah.
I think with the Giant, that a humanized version of him, it's relatable, just because when he came in, it was very gimmicky when he was with Kevin Sullivan, like extremely gimmicky. But this was pretty much how he was presented. And when you humanize monsters, people can really relate with them. And I'll give you an example that's not WCW. Bad Blood 97, when Kane showed up and you had never seen a humanized version of The Undertaker, who is a Giant. And a humanized version of The Undertaker is something you can relate to. Plus, you feel for the Giant because he's making a stand against the NWO. His partner is basically not medically cleared to partake in the match. This is a telltale ABC story of, well, can he do it on his own? Is Lex going to show up? So you kind of suspend disbelief, because basically, if you look at the Giant, you would think, yeah, he could take the outsiders, but there's still that bit of doubt. And I think I didn't have a problem with this.
Yeah, no, I'm super into this version of the Giant. I think maybe my hindsight is clouding, maybe because I know once he came to WWE, it was kind of back and forth, heel face, all the silly shit he did. So
every week.
It's to this day even. But yeah, but the WCW Giant, I'm I've been a big fan of. Even his in-ring stuff, a lot of that's really good, which again, we'll touch on that in the co-main events. Before that, we got old Diamond Dallas Page taking on Buffy Bagwell. Why are you laughing, JT?
I'm laughing because I enjoyed that match, and I'm going to tell you why I enjoyed it.
I did too.
That referee wasn't no hoe. That referee was no one's bitch, okay? Because
he got a pop from the crowd.
He had enough.
Like Buff Bagwell's went to shove him, and he shoved Buff Bagwell on his shit. I was like, oh, this ref ain't no hoe at all. Like, listen, I seen what you've been doing to all the other referees. I ain't going out like that. And I like the fact that he stood on his 10 toes. But going back to it, I thought disqualifications happen when you actually make contact with someone. No one touched Diamond Dallas Page, and the referee was salty because Buff Bagwell put his hands on him earlier. As soon as the NWO even touched the ring rope, he called him for the bell. Disqualification.
He had enough.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I know you had enough, but you still got to do the job right. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't call a disqualification.
Right. Maybe they're just trying to get a better look at the match. You know, they're trying to do some scouting.
They probably wanted to tell you something, but
they ran with malicious intent.
As soon as he seen him, he was like, "Nah, I got to end this match right now because I already done pushed down Buff Bagwell. They probably come to beat my ass. Let me go ahead and clear this match out."
Yeah. I mean, Nick Patrick wasn't on the show, was he?
No, Nick Patrick did not referee not one match. I think after Sold Out, you didn't really see Nick Patrick until like the following pay-per-view after SuperBrawl.
Yeah, well, he did have a match against referee Randy Anderson on Nitro, in which he got knocked out with brass knucks, but that's a whole different podcast. But no, yeah, I enjoyed this match way more than I thought I would. I'm not like a huge Buff Bagwell guy, but I don't know, I thought this worked. I mean, Buff is he's a good shithead heel, still kind of new heel here. Doesn't even have that top hat yet. But he's just like the way he's posing and the way he's like jawing with the crowd. Like, I think it's really working. He brought up when he shoves the ref and the ref shoves him back and scolds him. The crowd is just all on their feet, way behind this ref.
He was Errol Hebner before Errol Hebner.
Yeah. And that was a white hot crowd for DDP. They were white hot for him.
They wanted that diamond cutter. The diamond cutter is so hot at this point. I mean, we're just so jaded on the cutter now, but man, back then everybody just loved it. Just the ways that he could hit it out of nowhere. It was just
that's the master of that move. Listen, there's no Randy Orton without Diamond Dallas Page because even Randy Orton would tell you that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that move alone, they were already saying that the diamond cutter could come out of nowhere. Hence, we get here 2024, and we've been saying RKO out of nowhere for the past 10 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, DDP.
What do you think is the greatest diamond cutter of all time? Because I got mine. Mine is, do you guys remember the match he had with the Giant? Where the Giant had him on the top rope and was going to choke slam him from the top rope.
And then he reversed it.
And then he, like, when he's pulling him off the rope, DDP just grabs him and they like lean together and he just diamond cutters him from the top rope. Oh, that's still, in my opinion, the greatest diamond cutter of all time. Second would probably be the one with Eddie Guerrero out of the powerbomb position.
I was good. Yeah, I was going to bring that. That's the only other one I know. I'm not super familiar on the later years of WCW, but yeah, it was just so good. So good. I mean, the crowd is chanting for it. They're in the crowd chanting for DDP. DDP goes for the diamond cutter. The crowd gets on their feet. Then Buff counters it into a fisherman suplex. But Buff doesn't want to pin him. He wants a 10 count. He wants to just embarrass Dallas here.
Stupid.
Probably not the best idea here.
I'm like, okay, it's a last man standing match, I guess.
It's just, is that just an option? Could you just choose to not pin a guy?
It's like, you know what? He stinks. Count him out.
I don't want to touch him.
Cover the guy. I don't want to touch him.
Well, DDP eventually gets up before the count of 10. Buff goes for the Rude Awakening neck breaker, but gets countered into the Diamond Cutter. And as soon as they hit the mat, out comes the NWO. Out comes VK Wall Street and Six and whoever the hell, Vincent. They storm the ring. And like you mentioned, the ref is just like, all right, that's enough. Rings the bell. Disqualification.
Didn't even touch.
No, he just he had a gun, officer, I promise. But yeah, the NWO stores the ring, and DDP, he escapes. He's not going to try to take all these guys out at once. He's not an idiot. But so DDP wins by DQ, which is kind of a weird finish. But the visual of him like escaping through the crowd and being with the people. I mean, he was the people's champ. I don't know if he was called himself that at this point, but
no, he wasn't calling himself that. But if we want to be for real, DDP was the people's champ before The Rock was.
Yeah, he started it.
It's a shame they never did that feud. I guess it's not too late, huh?
Ain't never too late.
Never too late.
Final boss versus DDP Yoga. Let's book it.
Might as well, shit. And if you're gonna book it, give him his WCW theme music back. Not the bullshit that we hear when we watch Peacock. Give me that knockoff of Team Spirit.
Yep, Self High Five.
They're completely different songs. I don't know what you're talking about. One's da dun dun, one's da dun dun. Okay.
All right, Vanilla Ice. Ours goes ding 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 ding. Yo, I was so embarrassed. It's like, oh, he's from Florida. It's like, I'm from Florida. It's like, oh, come on, man.
But, I am too.
I mean, technically. But man, that right there, I mean, DDP versus The Rock, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I mean, he could have stalked The Rock's wife instead of Undertaker's wife, and we could have gotten it done, right?
Randy Orton.
Probably would have been a better feud.
Couldn't have been worse, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you do DDP versus Randy Orton too.
I don't hate that.
It's there.
They missed the boat on that during the time of the Legend Killer.
Yeah. I guess they never really.
Because remember, Randy Orton was taking out all the legends.
Mae Young.
Over 55. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you know the legend that he never touched? DDP.
Damn. He's ducking them, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, we got the U.S. title on the line here in this next match. We got the champion, Eduardo Guerrero, taking on Chris Jericho, which just seeing this on paper, it's like, oh man, two huge stars fighting for the title. But you forget, like at this point, they're just kind of no name, not really any character to either of these guys, both baby faces, kind of just happy-go-lucky white meat baby faces here. So, I mean, it's like a technically good match, like a very clean match, some fun, unique offense from both guys, but the crowd is just not into this one, I felt like.
They shit all over this match.
Ooh, boring chance right out the gate.
Yeah, I'm like, you do not know that you have two Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers right here that are going to change the foundation of the business way more in the 2000s than anybody on that card not named Sting or Hogan, because of the fact that they went out and had probably one of their best matches that nobody cares about. This is like the forgotten Jericho Eddie Guerrero match that when you watch it, if you were to put that type of match on today on pay-per-view, instantly people are just into it. They didn't care. They did not care at all. And it showed. No, there was like the only time the crowd even gave a shit was when the match was over.
Nope.
And I thought that this was a great match that nobody seemed to give credit to. I thought it was one of the best matches on the card. If you don't worry about the crowd reaction and you just focus on the wrestling, it was almost like watching a New Japan match with basically the crowd not being invested in anything, but you just hear. You would have thought it took place at WrestleMania 36. It might as well have taken place at WrestleMania 36. You could hear a rat piss on cotton out there, and I love the match though. It is what it is.
Yeah, this was probably once again one of their better matches. And if you look at their matches from ECW, and you look at their matches WWE, look at their matches WCW, this was probably one of their best matches, as far as move for move, word for word, bar for bar, going at it. Like this was Graps. This was Graps at its best with those two. And you already know how I feel about Jericho now. Say as far as still wrestling.
The Ocho?
The Ocho, Mickey Rourke. I mean the wrestler over here, but no, by the way, he blocked me for like one of the funniest, pettiest tweets ever. But I digress. I don't know if you remember when he had the all black in his hair on Dynamite, and it was kind of remind me how Scott Hall used to dye his hair black to hide the gray. So I put out the tweet saying that Jericho uses the same products LeBron James does. So after that, he blocked me, and the rest is history. But no, Jericho had a great match. Eddie had a great match. Unfortunately, Jericho didn't get the win, but I think this was starting the wheels turning for a Jericho heel run.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where in the timeline it happens. I know both these guys end up turning heel. I'm pretty sure in the course of '97, right? Sometime in '97, they both turned heel.
If I remember right, I think it was Jericho who turned heel first.
Right, and then Eddie. I mean, he's heel for the Ray match at Halloween Havoc. So like, and I feel like this match probably sparked a lot of like, okay, we these guys need something for their character other than just being happy-go-lucky. I'm just out here to wrestle and do my best kind of thing. And I mean, we have another situation here where Eddie wins. So Eddie wins with a sunset flip. It's kind of out of nowhere. I mean, there's some pretty hard-hitting moves over the course of the match. Eddie hits this gnarly-looking brain buster on Jericho. I mean, one of the best brain busters ever. Jericho busting out this, I don't know what you call it. It's like a spitting torture rack kind of deal into a backbreaker. It's kind of plancha, dives all over the place, missile drop kicks. So fun stuff. Like you said, if you put this match on mute, you're like, man, this is probably one of the best matches of the show. But you listen to it and you're like, I mean, neither guy is over at this point. But again, just a really good match. And
I didn't like Brain, Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary. Kept calling Eddie Guerrero La Bamba. Now you fast forward 2024. Brain would have got canceled. Bobby the Brain Heenan would have got canceled, calling him La Bamba, and then it didn't help any better that the pay-per-view before that you had NWO sold out Mexican jumping beat. It was like, come on, man. Like what's going on here?
Welcome to the 90s, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, the good old days. No, I'm just kidding. But Eddie wins.
Those were the days.
And again, Eddie's like, he puts the title on Jericho's shoulder. Like, no, dude, you just beat him. I'm like, just take your title and put it around your waist or whatever. I don't know. But
just more do another Prince Ikea.
Do you think Eddie got his inspiration from the Prince? That was his biggest influence.
She's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that too. That works for me, brother.
I'm surprised he didn't come out barefoot with a layo around his neck
and a ponytail.
Well, after that, we get something. We got a triangle tag team match on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. A lot to unpack here. So just to set the scene here, it was supposed to be a 4-way tag team match. So here we got the Harlem Heat versus the Public Enemy versus the Faces of Fear. And it was supposed to be the Steiners, but they're not here. Why are they not here? Well, let me tell you. They got in a car crash. This car crash also was caught on videotape. And the videotape unveiled that the NWO caused this crash. I think it was Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Six were in a car. They were driving around. They saw the Steiners at a gas station getting in their car. So they followed the Steiners, and they're following them. They eventually kind of bump them a little bit in the back of their car, and then they drive next to them, and they're yelling at each other like, "Ah, you rascal." And then this distracts the Steiners, and then their car goes ass over tea kettle, flips, goes into a tree. So the Steiners are dead. But so now they're out of this match. And also, by the way, it was supposed to be a number one contenders match. But now that the Steiners aren't in it, it is no longer a number one contenders match, according to Tony Schiavone. So that eliminates all reason to care about this match. Now we just got tag teams fucking around in the ring. I don't know. How do you guys feel about how this match was set up, the stakes involved, all that stuff?
So let's not forget that early on in the show, the Harlem Heat were in the back, supposedly on the WCW hotline, calling people. Answering the hotline. Let's not forget that fact. I enjoyed the match. Shout out to Harlem Heat coming out there with the silver do-rags on. Listen, I did not want a do-rag that bad as a kid until I seen the Harlem Heat wearing them. I didn't want a nose bandage until I see the Harlem Heat wearing them. But they come out, Booker T talking shit, coming down the ramp. You know, Stevie Ray is basically like the guy, like, yeah.
We gonna hurt somebody.
We gonna hurt somebody. They gonna Stevie Ray, yeah, basically. But I enjoyed it. Then you had Public Enemy coming down, Rocco Rock, Johnny Grunge. You know what I'm saying? I was a Public Enemy fan back then, only because I want to say because the table. They always bought a table out, so you knew someone was going to go through the table. Unfortunately, during this match, the table's just there ringside.
Right. Yeah, it didn't come into play, I guess, huh?
At all. No one went through the table. It was just sitting there.
They just brought it out for the the death match later.
They bought their same table out for the death match, but it was really there for the aesthetics, basically, right? Then we get to the Faces of Fear, Mang and the Barbarian, which to me was probably one of my favorite tag teams to play with on WCW Revenge.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. It's a shame, because those guys should have grabbed the titles early on. They really should have.
They were legit.
They were one of the best tag teams on the roster. The Faces of Fear was the answer to the Head Shrinkers,
right,
in WWF. That was WCW's answer. And to me, if I'm going back, I liked it. Not the Head Shrinker, but I liked the Faces of Fear over the Head Shrinkers.
I would say, yeah, for sure. I agree.
But no, this match was cool. It was a clusterfuck. Once again, referee not paying attention to who's a legal man. Rocco Rock takes the hoodie off his head. He's bald head, which for us, we knew him with having the braids and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think Rocco Rock was black. He wasn't even black. He fooled me. He fooled me the same way Johnny B. Bad did. Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, because, but the match itself was a good one at the end of the day, but it was a lot of clusterfuck going on. Then we get to the part for the finish where you got Rocco Rock jumping off the top rope, and I think it was the Barbarian. He catches him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Johnny Grimes comes off the rope, hits his own partner, and then he pulls his partner on top of the Barbarian and pulls the referee to count 3. And guess what? Rocco Rock was even the legal man.
You want to say, wasn't even a legal man. It was just like, fuck it. All right, they out of the ring. You get in the ring and do your thing. And this was the first time that I was caught off guard because, with Meng, like Meng was one of my favorite wrestlers to use on WCW NWO Revenge. Another thing is, I'm like, did this motherfucker just casually bust out a pile driver? And I had to remember this is 1997, so pile drivers weren't banned by then. Mm-hmm. Harlem Heat was beating the crap out of Public Enemy for the majority of the match.
Yeah.
And like, it was pretty much like, there is one point in the match I do want to talk about.
Please.
Booker T goes for an elbow drop.
Yes, I had this noted too.
Okay, if you want to talk about it, or are you cool?
No, go ahead, please.
Booker T goes for an elbow drop, and this is just the athleticism and the talent of Booker T that just he had star written all over him. Misses the elbow drop, instantly changes direction and hits the spin-a-rooney, gets right back up and hits this high-ass calf kick out of nowhere. It was a work of art to see that. And I'm like,
Talking about the Harlem sidekick.
The Harlem sidekick.
Yes.
Out of nowhere.
Dude.
I'm like, Booker T, man. Destined for greatness, sentenced to greatness. That's what his documentary is called. Pile drivers being busted out, Public Enemy taking a beating and stealing a win at the last minute. Rocco Rock being bald randomly for no reason. Just like, okay, guess you're cutting your hair today. But overall, I think it was a passable match. There were some dry spots a little bit, but overall, I mean, if Public Enemy is going to win, it's good. But you could have done without this match.
It was one of the shortest matches on the card, by the way, too.
Yep.
Which, like I've seen a couple of these triangle tag team matches up to this point, because I'm going through chronologically, and they're still in the process. Like you guys mentioned earlier, like multi-man matches weren't super common at this point, at least like in American wrestling. So they're still kind of figuring out how to pace these type of matches, but I thought this was paced pretty well. It didn't stay too long. It was a cluster, but I think it worked. And to your point, Booker T definitely stood out to me in this one. That spot, I mean, just the spin-a-rooney, just the one fluid motion, it's like his spin-a-rooney built up power into that kick. Like it was just a work, like you said, a work of art.
Charged it up.
I mean, everything he did was just so explosive and athletic. It was so good. And I mean, shout out Barbarian, this strong motherfucker, catching Rocco Rock out of a top rope senton, which Rocco Rock's got to be like, what, 280, 290 at this point?
Yeah.
Big dude. And Barbarian just straight up catches him, like upside down, which, first of all, shout out Rock for having the trust in him to do that. But then Grunge, like you said, cross body, kind of a double pin action. So the Public Enemy wins. Do they challenge for the titles? Who knows? Who cares at this point? But it was a fun little showcase. Like I think it added a different like texture to the show. Where we've had a lot of lucha stuff. Let's get some big boys in there, club each other, have a bit of a cluster. So I thought it worked in the context of like where it was on the card and stuff. So I was happy with it. But man, let's talk about Mongo for a second. We got Steve Mongo McMichael, accompanied by Debra, taking on Double J, Jeff Jarrett. This is so we got Horseman versus wannabe Horseman. So the stakes are if Jeff Jarrett wins, he's officially a Horseman. But Tony Schiavone brings up a good point on commentary. He says, so if Jeff Jarrett becomes a Horseman, that there's now 5 Horsemen. So does that mean they're now the 5 Horsemen, or does he take somebody's spot? So it's almost set up as like, if Mongo loses, he's out kind of deal, which is, I felt like was kind of alluded to. But we got Debra on the outside, who's Mongo's wife, but she also likes Jarrett, so she's conflicted. She wants to give Jarrett a fair shot in the Horsemen, and so she's kind of like helping both of them, or she just wants a fair fight. Like she hits Jarrett's hand when he's got it on the ropes for extra leverage on the abdominal stretch, and
these hoes ain't loyal.
I was just about to say that because she even said, I don't know who to go for. How about your husband? How about your husband? How about that? How about your husband? You clearly are married to the guy that's fighting for a spot. Fighting for his spot in the Horseman because he probably thinks he's going to get kicked out. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Mongo McMichael is a former Super Bowl champion. Not even a former, he is a Super Bowl champion. Super Bowl 20 with the 85 Bears. Okay. And during this match, he was pushing the age of 39. And mind you, Mongo had a great moveset for a guy his size, a great moveset for an athlete of his caliber. Now, when we get into the match, it was a great match actually it was a good match. But the thing that bothers me was Debra's interference in the match and the likelihood that she's helping Jeff Jarrett win. So to go off of that, later on in 1997 in July, Jeff Jarrett and Mongo McMichael competed at Clash of the Champions 25 for the United States Championship, in which Debra had left Mongo for Jarrett once he was kicked out of the Horsemen. Mongo won his first championship beating Jeff Jarrett. So this kind of set up a mid-card feud for 1997 for the fit, because if you watch that match, that was one of the loudest pops Mongo ever got in his career, was when he beat Jeff Jarrett. Absolutely. It happened on, hold on, because I'm really good with dates. August 21st, 1997. Pop. Clash of Champions 25. Incredible pop.
You just have that date on the top of your dome. Huh? That's impressive.
Yeah, no, because I have to remember dates, like, that's just with my job, and like I remember wrestling dates. You got to remember these kind of things.
You got to remember all of Mongo's accomplishments. You're right.
You got to remember it. You got to remember. Mongo was 39 at the time. This was before he had left WCW in '99 and went to TNA in 2008, and then before he had had ALS, he had put on such great matches that we often forget about them. And he was one of the forgotten mid-carders in WCW, which I challenge anybody to go and watch that match from Clash of Champions 25 in 1997 and compare it to some of the pops that WCW got during the height of its period. It's up there with a lot of different ones.
Yeah, I mean, I was super impressed by Mongo in this one. Like, to my knowledge of Mongo, because there was a Twitter account a few years ago. I don't know if you guys caught it. It was like something about Mongo, but it was like posting all of his botches and all of his silly.
I remember that.
So in my head, Mongo's like, oh, he's this bumbling idiot in the ring. But I'm watching this, like, no, this dude's pretty fucking good, especially for like a guy who's retired NFL player. Like you said, he's 38, 39 here. And like he's busting out like military presses and all these power moves, and he's almost more importantly, like he's a great like shit talker. Like he's doing these moves, and everything in between the moves is so good. It like feeds into his character. Like he knows what he's doing out there. And to your point, like on paper, like Jeff Jarrett versus Mongo, I'm like, whatever. But like this one sucked me in. I was into this one. Even with Debra's constant like turning to the camera, like, I don't know who to support in this one. Like, shut up, Debra, you stupid idiot. To your point, like, yeah, your husband, maybe, perhaps, but maybe she just saw that Jeff Jarrett strut and was like, you know what? Kind of dig that. And she was hypnotized. So
hypnotized by the strut.
Who could blame her, really? At this point, Jarrett, long, luscious hair. I mean,
she's like, I can't have Ric Flair, so I'll get the next best thing.
But ultimately, also Mongo's front chop blocks were so awesome. Like the way he from the front, the football plays into the football character.
That's
like,
the football pedigree, baby. That's the football pedigree.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Braun Breaker uses some of those now to this day.
I bet he does.
And also, Mongo has a very underrated tombstone pile driver. Like he did tombstones really well.
Yeah, very true, very true. But he did not need it here, or maybe he did need it because the ref gets knocked out at some point, of course, because it's WCW. Mongo wants his briefcase, which he's still carrying around that stupid steel Halliburton briefcase for whatever reason, which Debra has for him. So Mongo asks Debra for the briefcase. Debra's like, oh, I've had enough. So she just throws it in the air, and Jeff Jarrett happens to catch it. And Jarrett smashes Mongo so hard with this briefcase. I don't know if it's like a gimmicked briefcase or whatever the hell, but he smashes the hell out of him. And Jarrett pins him. And we have a new horseman on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Jarrett beats Mongo here. And like I said, I was pretty sports entertained by this one.
Tony Schiavone on commentary. Oh, well, I smell divorce.
No shit.
No, that was Brain. Bobby Brain. He was like, I smell divorce. I mean, yeah, after that, I mean, come on now. Like, you supposed to be my ride or die. My right hand. And you going to throw the briefcase to the one that I'm going up against? Am I out? That's what we doing? You set me up. I gave you things that you couldn't even pronounce. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You gonna go ahead and put me in this predicament? All right, cool. Call the lawyers up. Draw up the papers.
They are not loyal, as they say. The hoes being they. So, but yeah, so good stuff there. And we got something on our hands next. We got a San Francisco death match. Chris Benoit with woman versus Kevin Sullivan with Jacqueline, which I'm just learning now that Jacqueline was in WCW.
Oh yeah.
Good. I mean, look, first of all, the women here, like, roll tide on that one. I mean, they're here to fight, but not looking too shabby coming out there. So Kevin Sullivan, Chris Benoit, I think most people kind of know the backstory here. They're very real. Like, I mean, Chris Benoit took Kevin's woman. It's basically the gist of it. And
that was
it started out as like
storyline playing out.
I mean, that's really all it is.
With a black woman involved for no reason, just there for extra security.
Right.
And I'm not going to lie. I was sports entertained by this one.
This ruled. It's so weird in hindsight, but this ruled.
This match was so weird that it was good. Because
it was definitely top 3 on the card.
I'm not going to lie. This is going to sound weird. The women actually performed better than the men on this card. I like in this match, like Woman and Jacqueline. You would have thought that the feud was between Woman and Jacqueline, and Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan were just there to accompany them because they completely stole the show from Benoit and Sullivan. And at one point, Kyle, do you remember when they said, fuck it, we're just going to grab the strap together and clothesline both of our men?
They were kicking the shit out of the men in this one. Almost like a tag team match.
Yeah, because I'm like, it went from being, it was like, you know, Benoit and Woman against Sullivan and Jacqueline to Jacqueline and Woman against Sullivan and Benoit. Because they were wrestling much harder. And the table not breaking at the end of the match, which I thought was hilarious because it was like you had Jacqueline get on top of Sullivan and cover him. Benoit, you know, dives off. Neither of them go through the table. And if we could jump to the finish, please. Like Benoit pins Sullivan, wins the match, and then he rolls over, and then they act like they fell from the rafters. And like, I didn't understand what happened because they weren't, I could see if like they had went through the table maybe, but they didn't.
Right.
And I think they were probably.
The table would have broke the fall. So I'm thinking in this sense, the thing was that it knocked the air out of everybody. You know what I'm saying? The people lost their air. The wing pipes could be crushed. So the neck.
Okay, so, Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, you know, it was definitely one of the best matches on the card, hands down, top 3 out of all of them.
Yeah,
but this was very, very entertaining. Lots of low blows. Jacqueline just being great as usual. Woman handling her business like this. Them two going at it gave me ECW catfight vibes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I can in my head while I'm watching this the other day, I'm hearing Joey Styles scream out "catfight, catfight." You know what I'm saying? So that's what I heard. I wasn't even paying attention to the commentary that was on the TV, but they did a great job with it. But back to what Daz was saying, yeah, the women definitely took over the match.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, so like the premise coming into here is that the women are going to be strapped to each other while the men, I don't know what the logic, I don't know why they thought that was gonna, I don't know, but like it's just immediately they put the straps on and they just immediately start brawling. Like they pair off, men brawl with each other, the women do, and then they intermingle through the match.
Did you happen to catch on commentary Bobby the Brain Heenan saying, never get that close to a woman with a scrap on. And it's like, I'm sitting and I'm dying laughing because
I'm like, that's ahead of his time.
no, listen, he
I was
knew
about to
what
say,
the
when were
fuck
they
he was
invented?
doing. He knew what he was doing when he said it because I turned up the volume and I can hear Tony Schiavone almost giggle. You know what I'm saying? But then it gets quiet, and then I think Dusty starts to talk to cover him laughing. But if they had the cameras like they did now with the commentary table, I'm pretty sure we would have saw Tony Schiavone laughing because Bobby knew what he was doing when he said that. He knew.
And like Kyle had pointed out, there was no point of really them being strapped because their hands came loose on the strap and they were just like,
take
fuck
it off. Like,
It's, at this
like
point,
Hogan and Vader at what was it, Uncensored?
Uncensored 90, 95, no, 96. No, 90,
95.
Yeah, 95.
Yeah, five.
It's a debaucherous show. By the way, just quick side note. So I looked up when the strap-on was invented because I was curious. Because maybe is that before his time or was it invented? So it was invented in 1965 by Gosnell Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
It was created. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It was invented because Duncan was disabled and he needed a dildo to use as a disabled man. So out came the strap-on. So you can thank Gossel Duncan for that invention, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Pull out the strap.
Pull out the strap-on. And it's a brawl, but there was a lot of intensity. Like, I'm sure the real life undertones fed into it. Like Benoit and Sullivan, they fight to the parking lot at some point. They got some split screen action where they're both fighting in separate areas of the arena. But which at times, like, those kind of brawls can like lose my interest, but the intensity that these four people involved brought to this was great. Like the women are breaking up pins too, like they're getting involved. So it's like it just all weaved so well throughout this match. And then the finish, like you mentioned, Benoit has Taskmaster set up on the table in the ring. Benoit goes to do the headbutt through Sullivan, but Jacqueline climbs on Kevin to block. Benoit just leaps anyways. Good on him. And table doesn't break. Everybody just goes tumbling down. And there's no real winner, right? I think it's just like a no contest. Or does somebody pin somebody?
No, Benoit pinned him under the table.
That's right.
Literally
That's right.
Under the table.
But everybody's like knocked out. Everybody except for Nancy. Everybody is just, I mean, they get the stretchers, they get all the agents come out. I think stupid Red Rooster comes out. What's his name?
Terry Taylor.
A couple other guys come out. It feels like a who's the God? I'm forgetting everybody's name. Mustache announcer guy. Always did the report on the scene. Always called Brain a Weasel on Nitro. Less something. Lee Marshall.
Oh, Lee Marshall.
Lee Marshall's out there.
Lee, go get help. Lee.
What's Lee Marshall gonna do? Stupid ass. They get 3 separate stretchers and cart out Benoit, Jacqueline, and Sullivan. And it was a bit overkill with the finish. It was very drawn out, like very somber. Like, oh, are these guys gonna be okay? When it was like ultimately not a crazy spot. Like you said, maybe if the table broke, but even then, like, I don't know, I thought it was a little much, but putting over the severity of this feud, I guess. So I get that, but the match was fun. Finish was a bit wonky, but overall, I was, like you said, I was sports entertained by this. But we shift to the co-main event here. We got the tag team titles on the line. The champions, the Outsiders, of course, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, taking on the Giants with because he was supposed to be teaming with Lex Luger, like we mentioned earlier. Lex was not medically cleared, so it's just the Giant here in a handicap match against the Outsiders, at least for a little bit. But I think I enjoy this. I want to say I enjoy. Yeah. I mean, the Giant. How do you put a babyface Giant in peril? You put him in a handicap match, but Giant still clearing house, throwing these guys all over the place. Six is getting involved ringside. I thought this was pretty good stuff. What do you guys think about it?
I thought it was good, man. I thought it made the Giant look like a relatable character,
Yeah.
especially since when Kevin Nash jackknife power bombed him.
Whew. Gnarly. That was crazy.
That was gnarly. That was great. And
got the biggest pop that
he
night.
threw I couldn't remember if this was the botched one or not. So I was watching him do it. I was like kind of holding my breath. I was like, oh, please don't break his neck here. But he tossed him all the way across the ring. It was crazy.
The botched one was at a sold out. It was sold out. The one that he botched.
I see.
This one was clear cut, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And
NWO sold out.
Must have been 98.
I want to say it was 90, 98, but I always thought it was like on the Nitro or something.
No, it was at a sold out. It was sold out. It had to have been. It had to have been.
I believe you.
Because I just remember watching it, and it was, I want to say it's got to be sold out 98 at least, because that sold out was in January. So when I watched it, I remember I was watching it and I had pizza roll. So was it 98 or was it?
98.
Because I know the date was January 24th.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it was that. Okay. So it sold out 98. And because I remember watching it and I was like, it was snowing on the ground. I'm like, oh, it's snowing on the ground. I turn around and I see the power bomb happen because my dad had ordered it for me because I had good grades in school at the time. When I watched this match, I was like, man, so much has changed from like 95 through 97 for how they had basically presented him. Even when he had won the second World War III event, they still presented him like a force. With this one, and having him be that relatable character that's in peril, it basically humanizes him. And people knew Lex was coming to the ring. It was clearly evident at that point. Lex hits the ring with the cast on. You know there's going to be some trouble. And I said to myself, if they're taking the title, I'm thinking to myself, they're going to take the titles off the NWO. This has got to mean something. And it did. It definitely did. And this was, again, part of the larger storyline with the Giant being at ends with the NWO. I thought it was a good tag team match. Had a nice little build up with Lex coming in there. They definitely got the win. Aside from the finish, if you submitted to the torture rack, there's no point for you to count a 3 count after you just said ring the bell. But then the Giant choke slams Scott Hall and then he pins him. And I'm like, this is like the 3rd or 4th fuck up this night with the ref and the booking decision, aside from the main event, where you're like, what was the purpose of doing that? Nash already submitted to the torture rack. What's the point?
Well, I think the ref just wants to stick it to the NWO, perhaps.
I think it was more so stick it to the original stipulation, 2-on-1. Luger not really being legal, but legal, which I thought was complete bullshit because Bob Orton wrestled with a cast on his arm for a whole entire year. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't even broke. It was gimmick. So I think it was more so just to stick to that basis. But yeah, the referees, once again, fucking up shit, seem to be the trend of the whole entire pay-per-view.
Classic WCW.
It's WCW. That's what happens.
Yeah. But I mean, that aside, like you said, the build-up with Giant, being 2-on-1 disadvantage, but still coming off like a monster. And then when he's down and out, Lex comes out, tosses Eric Bischoff to the side, who's trying to prevents him from joining this match. He just tosses him out of the way, sprints to the ring, cast shots for everybody. Rack. By the way, the torch rack on Kevin Nash is quite the visual too. That's a big bastard. He's taller than the Giant, I think. When they were next to each other, it looked like Nash was taller, but maybe he has lifts.
Kevin Nash is not taller than the Giant. I noticed because I stood next to both of them before, and I could tell you the Giant has probably about a good 2 inches pause on him.
Strap on.
Kevin Nash.
Every inch counts.
Hey, yo. Kevin Nash at this point stage in his life, when I took a picture with him, he's every bit of 6'10", because we're literally almost neck and neck in the picture. Big Show, Paul White, Giant, he's at least 7'1", 7'2".
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, who knows nowadays? They're both shrinking.
Oh, yeah. And I'm apparently still getting taller. I hate it here.
But yeah, so good stuff here. I mean, Lex is still red hot. So is the Giant, really. So having them win the tag team titles here, I mean, the Outsiders losing is a big deal. You don't see that a lot. I mean, I guess they lost to the Steiners at the last pay-per-view, but seeing the NWO get some, comeuppance, pretty rare. So cool little moment here. Yeah, the double finish deal was weird, but I just took it as the ref just kind of be like, yeah, gotcha kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm sure Bischoff will turn the decision on Nitro the next night. Seems like what he likes to do, but man, that brings us to the main event. We got the world title on the line. Hollywood Hulk Hogan defending against Rowdy Roddy Piper. So apparently Roddy did make the trip from Alcatraz. And he comes out, he's all dirty, his shirt's ripped. He hasn't eaten in 7 days. Who knows what this guy's psyche's like. So he's coming out there. And he beat Hogan at Starrcade. It was a non-title match, though. Don't know why, but it was a non-title match. So now he's got his rematch here. He wasn't going to wrestle again, but his son got involved. Hogan punked him out. So now it's personal. And now we got Hogan, Piper for the second time here in WCW. I feel like the story here is the finish, but I don't know. Any notes on the match itself, I guess?
One major note. The sleeper hold.
Yeah. To
me, back then, Roddy Piper made it believable. Because remember, at this time, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Dream, is a form of a sleeper hold. And then you also had not the Cobra Clutch. Well, yeah, the Cobra Clutch. That was also a term, a variation of the super hold. No one had been using it because those two wrestlers at the time were inactive. So I remember watching it, and recently watching it again, you would have thought the match was over, right? Right. Then, of course, during the match, you got Sting and Macho Man come down. Macho Man continues to go down, and then he pulls Hogan's legs underneath the ropes. The referee was the one that called the finish for the sleeper hold. He clearly could see at the time that Hogan's feet was not underneath the ropes when he lifted his arm and dropped it for the third time. Then we get the brass knucks, Macho Man turning heel. But I would say, once again, that tip that Mean Gene was given about that member that he's seen eating at the Waffle House or whatever, that person was Macho Man. It had to be. I mean, at this point. But I enjoyed the match simply because Roddy Piper's always been like one of my favorites as far as like just psychology, being loose cannon, like all that type of stuff. I live for that shit. I lived for that as a kid. And then to see it play out, chef's kiss. And unfortunately, Piper didn't get the WCW World Heavyweight Championship title at the time. Unfortunately, he didn't get it. But I do like the swerve at the end. That was a nice swerve.
You know what's that doesn't make sense to me about this match. The main thing. This is the one thing that just like turned me off from this match, because it was a good match. You know, this was, they worked so many times before, like it was pretty much they can do this match in their sleep. Sting comes out with Macho Man, right? So Sting comes out with Macho Man, and they're basically monitoring what's going on. Watch out for the NWO. Sting starts to, well, Macho Man walks down. Sting grabs him like, hey, where the fuck you going? We're going to the back. Sting turns around and walks away. Macho Man walks with him. Macho Man turns right back around and walks down to the ring. Sting doesn't even bother turning around to see if Macho Man was there, which makes no sense to me, because if I've got somebody walking with me, at some point during the time that I'm walking, I'm going to check to make sure they're still back there.
Right.
So when the turn happened, and another thing is, before the turn, Hogan, 1, 2, 3, arms went down. The referee was in the middle of the ring with Hogan when that happened. Under no circumstance would he be like, wait a minute. No, he was way over. You were sitting right there. There's
Captain
no reason.
Fantastic or whatever his name is.
Like, you were sitting right there. There's no way that Hulk Hogan is Reed Richards as Mr. Fantastic and is just going to stretch his legs to the bottom of the rope. Restarts the match, gets the brass knucks, as JT said, and pins Piper. It literally made no sense to me. And thirdly, another thing is, the NWO is out there whooping everybody's ass, basically. They're basically just beating the shit out of Piper. Where the fuck is Sting?
He flew away. He flew to the rafters.
Was he up in the rafters and couldn't get his cable to come down to the ring? Or
remember Sting was his own man. He wasn't repping WCW, or he wasn't repping NWO. So after the match was over, it's like, I mean, I really ain't got no skin in the game. The person I came down with done clicked up with the ops. So at this point, there's no skin in the game. I'm cool. Piper, you want to do this on your own, bro. Sorry to tell you. Sting just basically was like, all right, that's not me. I stay on the 5th floor. Just like, I don't see nothing.
Yo, if I'm Piper, I'm crashing out on Sting. The next time I see him, I'm taking a bat and going for his fucking knees. I'm taking all that shit out.
Man, it's there's a lot of just like bells and whistles here that not all of it really makes sense. I guess like Sting, Macho, they come out, like you said. Macho walks to the ring, Sting does it. I took that as just Sting being like, all right, he's on his own. I guess we're not on the same page. I'm Sting. And then he flaps away. And then doesn't come out. I mean, it's not like him and Piper are boys per se. So it's like, whatever, Sting is going to go and do whatever Sting does. But yeah, the way the Macho turn, like I'm okay with Macho Man turning. I think
he was already wearing the colors. Shit, he already had on the black and white. I mean, his gear was tailor made. As a matter of fact, he wore that same gear in the NWO.
Yeah,
variations of it.
I bet
he was already black and white out. Like, he was ready.
Yeah. So, and the beatdown afterwards was kind of funny. Like, Hogan and Macho are taking turns doing the elbow and the leg drop, and they're holding down Piper as the other guy does it. It was kind of a fun to see these two be like gang members and like just beating down and mugging Piper. It was like so out of character for them at this point. So, and Macho painting, I assume, NWO on Piper's back. And so Hogan retains the title under somewhat dubious means. Macho's in the NWO. Who knows where Sting is? But I guess that creates some intrigue to tune into Nitro the next night, which is a lost art nowadays, I think. But overall, like, Hogan Piper, it was kind of a, you know what you're getting with these two. I thought it was pretty good. Finish was a little wonky, but I was sports entertained by it. I thought it was a good story beat. And the NWO continues. So, yeah, not too. I guess overall, I'm okay with this one.
One more for the good guys.
Yeah. Too sweet. But
Listen, loved it.
that brings what's the show? Fucking SuperBrawl 1997 to a close. If you guys had to throw a grade at this out of 100, what do you think you would throw at it?
I will give it a 75.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's a fair score. I mean, it had some highs, had some lows, but nothing too monumental stood out about this pay-per-view.
Right.
It was an average pay-per-view, so I'm going to go 70. You know what I'm saying? 70, 75, in between that range. Mm-hmm. Nothing over, nothing less. It wasn't god-awful, but it wasn't the greatest. It was an average pay-per-view. You know what I'm saying? So I enjoyed it for what it was. I had to take my mind back to 97 and not so much critique it as I would today's product. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So take my mind back to 97. It's definitely a C average, 70, 75.
Yeah. I might throw like a B- at it just because I liked how it was paced. Like it didn't drag like a lot of pay-per-views in this era did.
Yeah.
You got some good like Dean 6. You got Eddie Jericho, the fun death match, the main event shenanigans. Like
it was definitely a redeeming pay-per-view from Sold Out.
Yes. Yeah, that's for, I mean,
they never did that again.
No. Thank God. No Miss NWO too. What's her face doesn't have to defend her crown. Her crown. What a shame. What a shame. What a mark. But speaking of marks, appreciate you boys joining me today, talking some WCW. Where can everybody find you fine gentlemen, listen to you, watch you, taste you, all that stuff?
Pause on the taste me, but I can tell you where you can find us at Marks with Mike's, MARKSWITHMICS. That's on X, formerly known as Twitter, the Book of Faces, aka Facebook, IG. That's also on TikTok. Find us on YouTube at the same thing, as well as you can find Dallas over there at King Dallas Cash, all caps, on Twitter, aka X. You can find Dallas also, Humble Roses Pod on IG, as well as on TikTok. And you can also follow us and the rest of the squad, Culture Clash Network, at Culture Clash Net on Twitter, Culture Clash Network on IG, Culture Clash Network on TikTok, Culture_Clash_Network.
Hell yeah. All right, I guess we'll close this out with One Night in China. So I'll pull this up real quick.
Listen, the opening scene, you gonna love, Dallas. Watch this.
Once again, thank you to the Marks with Mike's boys, JT and Dallas, for joining me on this lovely, lovely journey through the WCW. Go check out the Marks with Mike's podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. All their socials are in the description, as are mine. Hey, you know what we should do is hit that goddamn jingle, Bartholomew. WCW, ECW, WWF, who's the hardest promotion? Eric or Vince or Paulie? I think we can agree, though. Heck, Myers is the shit. Alrighty then, the hardest promotion battle of 1997 continues. WWF, WCW, and ECW. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sharing my screen. You can walk through it with me visually, but if you are listening, I'll walk you through it with my sweet, sweet, velvety voice. But first thing, we got the overall scoreboard here. I mentioned it in the beginning. ECW is in the lead with 40. WWF has 14. WCW has 4. Now, keep in mind, this is as of this point in time. So as of February 23rd, 1997. So we're not taking into account things that happen after or anything like that. We're not using hindsight. We are basically grading this as if we were living through it through real time. So we got, overall best pay-per-views, best TV. We got a section of the best, best match, best wrestler, storyline, segment, and the worst of all of those things as well. They all got points associated to them, positive or negative. But the first thing we got to do here is grade this show because that'll factor in as well. So we grade from a scale of 0 to 100, obviously 100 being the best. And and we will judge by the average grade. We'll get to that in a second. So first things first, let's grade this show. 0 to 100. So for context, Sold Out got a 52 on my scale. Royal Rumble got a 58. In Your House 13, Final Four got a 60. ECW Crossing the Line Again, currently the best show of the year with a 72. So what does SuperBrawl get? So it's definitely better than Sold Out. We've come to that conclusion pretty easily, right? Very, very much better than Sold Out. Is it better than Final Four? I would definitely say so. Yeah, I would definitely say better than Final Four, so better than a 60. Is it as good as Crossing the Line Again? So these grades are kind of weighted in a sense. Like, ECW Crossing the Line Again, it was a good ECW show. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to really judge like WCW versus ECW. But SuperBrawl, I'm feeling 80, 81 perhaps. Let me type that out and see how it tastes in my mouth. I'm thinking 81. Like, it's not like a barn burner show, but it was well paced. There's some fun stuff, way more good than bad. No real duds on this show. Main event angle, while it was kind of clunky and silly at some points, I mean, it's a big, big deal. Big things happening. Got some cruiserweights on the show. Lex Luger moment was fun. The death match was kind of silly, but kind of fun. I think that might even be undercutting it a little bit. 81. I'm going to say 83. No. I think 81's actually pretty good. Let's not get too crazy. I was about to type that 3. I was like, whoa, big fella. Take it easy. I think 81's fair. So WCW SuperBrawl 7 gets an 81. So we refresh this little deal here. Now we look at which promotion has the best average grade. So ECW still has the best average grade as they have only had one show, which was a 72. WCW, their average is now a 66.5. WWF is a 59. So ECW still is in the lead in that aspect. So we go back to the overall scoreboard. Best pay-per-view, highest average score, still remains with ECW, so they maintain those 15 points. Best TV. So just overall, the best TV product. We're tracking ECW as the best. I don't think it's WWF. I'm trying to think if Nitro has really given us any. Like, it's fine, right? Nothing super huge. Like, you get the Piper promo from Alcatraz. You do get things like Prince Ikea beating William Regal. You got the NWO still roaming around. Some good like Horseman promos and things like that. I'm thinking maybe WCW might overtake this for now. Because the ECW is good. It's mainly promos and reruns from their super shows, mainly. Which is mostly what it's been this year. Now, while that has been good, I think what WCW is putting out slightly edges ECW out. So ECW overtakes those 15 points from ECW and takes it. ECW still in the lead, though, but not by as much. So let's see here. Best in-ring. Best in-ring product, just overall. WCW put out some good stuff on this show, man. I was very impressed by Dean Malenko versus Six. Even the main event stuff, like it's very like I'm choking on my own. See him in here. Even the main event stuff was pretty good. Like it's a Hogan Piper match. You kind of know what you're gonna get, but they did it well. The Luger and Giant stuff I thought was fun. Even like the Outsiders and fucking Jeff Jarrett and Mongo had a good match on this show, dude. I think WCW takes this one. They take it from the WWF. WWF is also coming off of a pretty lukewarm show in Final Four. So I think WCW takes those 10 points from the WWF. And now WCW is in the lead with 29 points. But we still got some things here. So we got the best out of ring. ECW currently in the lead here. So I think I'm going to have a better grasp on this in the next review, which will be ECW Cyber Slam 1997. They've been kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, story-wise, ECW has. I'm going to see how Cyber Slam shakes out. We also got Barely Legal coming up. There's a lot of variables at play. So my logic has been that ECW has the most well-rounded collection of stories out of the three companies, which I still think is true. Although WCW is starting to round out a little bit with like the Horsemen, Benoit and Sullivan. You got some good stuff even like in the Cruiserweight division, the Dean and Six story. You got Luger and his injured hand and Bischoff, that whole thing. I think what sets ECW apart just a bit from me is the promos. I think the promos are way better in ECW just because they're just so much more reality based and so much more engaging, in my opinion. So I think ECW maintains those 10 points for best out of ring. So now we move on to the best section. So best match of the year. We are tracking the In Your House Final Four Fatal 4-Way match as the best match of the year. So the question here is, what was the best match on this show? It was SuperBrawl being this show. Dean versus Six is my first instinct. Let me look through this card here to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. You could argue the death match. I think the wonky finish took a lot away from that, though, unfortunately. Yeah, I think Dean and Six is the only thing that would be in contention from this show. Is that better than the 4-way? Very different matches. I don't know, man. I really enjoyed that 4-way. Dean versus Six was very good. I think the 4-way just had more stakes and more, a better build and more spotlight on it. So I think that just barely edges out Dean versus Six. So WWF maintains those 5 points. Best wrestler of the year so far. We're tracking Stone Cold Steve Austin. Again, who on this show would be in the running? DDP. DDP's in there. I think he's definitely in the conversation. Even like Benoit could be in the conversation. Lex Luger even. It's crazy to say, given how, my introduction to Lex is not very fond of him. Rey Mysterio's in there. Dean Malenko. These are all guys that are definitely in the running. I don't think any of those guys, though, with the exception of DDP, which I'll put DDP here to the side for a second. None of those guys, I don't think, have the captivating character that Stone Cold has. Being like Ray and Dean and guys like that. So DDP versus Stone Cold at this point. Stone Cold? Why did I say it like that? DDP versus Stone Cold. As of this moment in time, I think DDP edges Stone Cold out. Now, keep in mind, we are not yet at WrestleMania 13. I have a feeling that might shift some things. But for now, we are going to throw this. Best wrestler of the year so far. Diamond Dallas Page. WCW takes those 5 points away from WWF. So now the World Wrestling Federation is now in the negative 1 point. All right. So best character / storyline. We are tracking Sting as the best. So not a lot of major happenings on this show. Again, you could throw DDP in here as well. I think Sting, just the overarching, like the overall umbrella of Sting just looming over WCW. I think that's a really interesting presentation. I'm very interested in where it's going. He hasn't had the matches really to solidify himself as the best wrestler of the year. But as far as a character and a storyline goes, with how this blends with the NWO, I think Sting is still a strong number one here. So I think Sting maintains that. So WCW keeps those 5 points. Best segment of the year. Best segment. We're tracking DDP giving the Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall on WCW. What other segments are in the running? You have the Outsiders running down the Steiners. I'm inclined to throw it at that. I mean, it's going to be WCW either way. I mean, any other, trying to think of the other TV that I've watched. I'm not super caught up on WWF and ECW, to be quite honest. WWF I am, not ECW. Nothing super. I think, yeah. We'll just leave it at that. Alcatraz promo, yeah, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I think Diamond Cutter to Scott Hall is still number one in my eyes. So WCW keeps those 5 points. By the way, if you disagree with any of these, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to DM me, join the Discord. Let's start a conversation. Maybe there's something I'm forgetting. Maybe there's something I'm overlooking. Leave a comment on my X post or whatever. Would love to hear from you. Leave a comment on the video, etc., etc. So let's get to the worst. The worst of the year so far. So worst match. We're tracking the match I brought up earlier in the show. The Royal Rumble Luchador 6-man as the worst match of the year so far. Nothing on this show is worse than that. I don't think, right? Just doing one more look over. Yeah, nothing on this show was worse than that. So, Rumble 6-man maintains worst match of the year. Worst wrestler of the year, Crush from WWF. Again, no one in WCW that I'm thinking of off the top of my head is worse than stupid ass Crush. Looking here, looking over the card, looking over the roster. You throw like Public Enemy maybe, but no, they're not that bad. They're not that bad. Buff Bagwell, he had a good match on this show, so I don't know. Crush still holds on to this one. WWF keeps those -3 points. Worst character / storyline. We're tracking Nick Patrick versus Randy Anderson. Just the overall feud and the match that they had on Nitro as well. It's just all bad, man. Yeah, it's very bad. How Randy Anderson has cancer and his family needs him to keep working to support them, but then Eric Bischoff fires him, and it's all stupid. So much time dedicated to it too. Then you had a match with Nick Patrick on Nitro. It's all dumb. So yeah, it's still the worst. WCW keeps those -3 points. Worst segment of the year, Miss NWO. I really don't see anything ever overtaken that. I'm inclined to just gray that out and to just let it ride. But yeah, as of now, still the worst segment, Miss NWO. So no changes in the worst section here. So that about does it. So new score here after SuperBrawl 7. WCW now in the lead with 34 points. ECW with 25. WWF with -1. So the champ is deep in third place here, but a lot of year left. A lot of things still to happen this year. 97 is a very volatile year for the wrestlings here in America. So looking forward to getting to it and looking forward to seeing your face right here next week on the Apron Bump. Appreciate you guys joining, watching, listening, what have you. Always appreciate the support, the likes, the retweets, the listens, the watches, the thumbs up, the thumbs in my ass. I appreciate all of these things. And I just want to jump through this camera and just give you a kiss on the cheek. Just want to paralyze you with my smooches. All right. That was a weird thing to say. I'm going to leave it in, though. That's all I got for you guys today. Appreciate you guys. Have a great old day or night or morning or dusk even, whenever you're listening to this. Bye. Mwah. I'm hard.
Yeah. the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.